The next part of our plan is to decide the allocation of random numbers to the probability and to our outcome. And this is a very important step. This is like our definition step. So we're defining what it is what this means and what that means. Okay, so we have to know what all of the possible outcomes are. So every outcome has a single probability associated with it, and all probabilities must add up to 1. So let's have a look at this in a bit more detail. So say I've got my probability of having blue eyes. In that case, the chance of having blue eyes is 0.7. The reverse of that, so the chance that I don't have blue eyes, is going to be 0.3. And I know that because the chance of having blue eyes and the chance of not having blue eyes has to add up to 1. So if I do 1 take away 0.7, I'll get 0.3. So the chance of having blue eyes is 0.7, and the chance of having not some other colour blue eyes is 0.3. Now there's some outcomes, some exercises here for you to do, and I want you to list all of those outcomes. So think about, for example, rolling a dice. What would you get? When you roll a dice, what can you get coming up on the dice? When you toss a coin, what are the outcomes that you could get? And so on. So I want you to try these exercises there. The second step is to look at what calculators and computers can do, and they can generate random numbers between 0 and 1 for us. And we are going to go to Google Sheets, and we are going to use the formula rand between, and this is going to this is how we are going to simulate this. So what I've asked you to do for this exercise here is to go into Google Sheets and type in that formula equals rand between and see what happens. Okay, so I will give you a quick demo of this. I'm just flicking to a new tab and I'll open up a new Google Sheet. It's being very slow. I'm opening up a blank sheet here, and I'm just going to go to this cell here, and I'm going to type in equals rand between bracket 1, 10, and you can see it's coming up here with a summary of what this formula is about. So it gives an example, and then a summary. It says here, it returns a uniformly random integer between two values inclusive. So we're giving the low and the high value, and that's just telling us the smallest and biggest number that we want to. And if you want, you can click on here and to go to more about it. So I'm going to close that bracket. So this is a function called rand between. And now that I've hit enter, it's come up with the value of 8 in that cell. So it's randomly generated me a number between 1 and 10, but it's only doing integer numbers. If I go back into this one again and click it again, or do another one, equals rand between 1 and 10, I get an answer of 5. So every time I do this formula, I'm going to get a randomly generated number, and you can see that the numbers are changing too as I type them. And that's okay, that's what we want to do. So this is just getting you used to this formula and understanding what it is that this formula does. So if I flick back to the exercise now, I want you to try these two, the rand between 1 and 10 and rand between 1 and 100. Okay, so that's the exercise. Then I want you, once you've done that, come back to this video, and now we're going to have a look at step 3. So say I have 10 random numbers, and those are numbers between 1 and 10. I need to match these up now. So if I am simulating a number that goes to 1 decimal place, so for example 0.2, then I'm going to generate 10 random numbers, because that 0.2 is in my tenths column, and that's why I know I need to generate 10 random numbers to allocate. If my probability that I'm trying to simulate, and this is what it will be for your assessment, because it has to be at a high enough curriculum level. If we're going to do it to 2 decimal places, for example 0.45, that's doing it to 2 decimal places. The 4 is in my tenths column, the 5 is in my hundredths column, so therefore I need to generate 100 random numbers and allocate these out. Okay, so let's have a look at an example to see what this means. So say I had my probability of getting blue eyes of 0.7. I know that this probability that I'm trying to simulate is only to 1 decimal place. So I'm going to, it's my tenths column, so I'm going to generate 10 random numbers, and I'm going to do that between 1 and 10, and I'm going to allocate them. So that means to match them up, to match up to the blue eyes, I need 7 random numbers, and I know that I need 7 random numbers because if I take that 7 over 10, that 10 comes from the fact that I'm generating 10 random numbers. 7 divided by 10 is equal to 0.7. So therefore I'm going to take my first 7 numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and match those to having blue eyes. Whereas the numbers 8, 9 and 10, if I randomly generate those, that means they're going to match to not having blue eyes. So let's have a look at a full example here, because that was just a part 1. If I talk about a child being born, and they could have blue eyes, and the chance of that is 0.3. They could have brown eyes, and the chance of that is 0.4. They could have green eyes, and the chance of that is 0.2. And grey eyes, the chance of that is being 0.1. So if you look at these numbers now, they should all add up to 1. If they don't, we need to have an other category. So we're going to take 0.3 plus 0.4, and that gives me 0.7, plus another 0.2, that gives me 0.9, plus another 0.1, that gives me 1.0. So those are the 4 probabilities I need to simulate. So I need to decide the allocation of the random numbers to those probabilities and outcomes, and then I have to describe them. So first of all, my different outcomes. Well, my outcomes, I could have blue eyes, brown eyes, green eyes, or grey eyes. So those are my 4 different outcomes. Those probabilities all add up to 1, as we just checked. Step 2 was deciding how many random numbers we're going to have. So if I look at the probabilities that I'm trying to generate, so in 0.3, 0.4, 0.2, 0.1, those numbers are all to 1 decimal place, so they're all going to the tenths position. So that means I want to generate 10 random numbers. So I'm going to generate the random numbers from 1 through to 10. My third step is now I'm going to match up those numbers and the outcomes to the probability, and I'm going to put it together in this table. So I've got my 4 outcomes along the top here: my blue eyes, my brown eyes, my green eyes, and my grey eyes. The probabilities, I've just got those from at the paragraph above. So chance of blue eyes was 0.3, chance of brown eyes 0.4, chance of green eyes 0.2, and chance of grey eyes 0.1. So to match now a probability of 0.3 from the 10 numbers that I'm going to randomly generate, I am going to allocate 3 of those numbers to match being a blue eye. So if I randomly generate a number between 1 and 10 and I get a 1 or a 2 or a 3, then that is going to match the outcome of having blue eyes. And I've written that as a sentence here. The numbers 1, 2 and 3 represent a child having blue eyes because there are 3 outcomes which matches the probability of blue eyes of 3 over 10, which is equal to 0.3. So for that merit level, I do need that description there. I do the same now for brown eyes. Now brown eyes has a probability of 0.4. I can't use 1, 2 and 3 because I've already allocated that to blue. So I need to choose the next 4 numbers. So I'm going to choose the numbers 4, 5, 6 and 7. Okay, so I'm choosing 4 numbers so that it matches the probability of 4 out of 10 or 0.4. I then go to my green eyes, and to do green eyes I've got a probability of 0.2. Now I've already used up the numbers 1 through to 7, so I can't use those. So the next numbers that are available to me are 8 and 9, and I'm going to choose 2 of those numbers because the probability of green eyes is 2 out of 10, or 0.2. Then I get to my last one there of grey eyes, and grey eyes has a chance of 0.1. I've already used up the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So the only number between 1 and 10 that's left is the number 10. So I'm going to allocate the number 10 to represent a child with grey eyes. And so that's what I've described there below for you. So we need both that box containing the allocation and a description of why these numbers represent this. Okay? So that's our context and our justification. So what you need to do now is you need to do that same full process for this exercise that I've got there. So give it a go, see how you go. If you're not sure about this one, ask for help.